We're at the time of huge level of reorganisation and disruption in the whole local authority sector as it was. So you had the merger of North and South Tipperary County Council, and then you had the mergers of county enterprise boards, tourism bodies, and all those others, and the community and voluntary sector fitted into that space. So what happened initially was you had a community and voluntary forum section in North Tipperary and an equivalent in South Tipperary that they operated as two separate bodies. So in theory, it was expected that they would disintegrate and then they would come together to form the one public participation network. So that's effectively how it formed. It came in under the 2014 Act, and the purpose of it really was to give communities a far stronger voice at the very basic level of policy making, so that they have an input at the early stage, and then to support them in delivery of the various initiatives they do county-wide. The first thing it has done is that it has facilitated us to be able to, when we're communicating on policy initiatives or policy structures, that we're able to hit the relevant groups in the community. So before we'd put out a generic piece of paper and say anybody who has an interest, come in and comment, it would hit everybody and it hit nobody. Now if we're looking for facilitation on sports partnership or on heritage or on tourism or economic development, there are key cohorts and structures within the PPN that we can actually direct that to very directly. So that's a really positive step. And the other really positive step is that the PPN themselves select individuals to sit on our strategic policy committees, and then they provide support to those individuals, and that they can partake then and ensure that whatever policies are coming out have some regard to the impact that will have on the community and voluntary sector. And what was the biggest challenge? I suppose they were very different. So first of all, the big plus about Tipperary is, and people don't sometimes realise or appreciate it, we have a really resilient, robust community sector in Tipperary. And you need to go outside of the county to realise how strong it is in Tipperary, really strong. And that's a credit to the two previous community and voluntary forums that operated north and south in the county. So probably the biggest challenge, to be fair, was, I would imagine, from the North Tipperary County Community and Voluntary Forum side, was they didn't have a real relationship with me because I would have worked in the south of the county. I had a very good relationship with the South Tipperary Community and Voluntary Forum, so they had a level of trust in me that they knew that I was engaging on the basis of genuineness. I wanted them to be independent. I wanted them to be truly reflective of the community sector, as did the new Tipperary County Council. So it was a case of maybe establishing relationships and building that trust with the individuals in the North Tipperary County Council side. But I think how we got over it was we set up an interim secretariat, if you like, and we selected two individuals from CAVA at the time and two individuals from South Tipperary Community and Voluntary Forum and an individual from the environmental pillar. And then along with the local authority, we worked together to try and work through those differences. Well, it's been extraordinary because when I was told would I come and say a few words on this, I said I better look for a few notes, and I had a bit of a job trying to dig it out. But one of the first KPIs, key performance indicators, we set ourselves on the interim secretariat is that we would get a minimum, if we could, of 50 groups to sign up to the PPN in each of the municipal districts. So that's 250. And we thought that's a bit of a stretch. We'll never get that far, but we will do our best. And actually, I think we're at, 1,300, 1,400 now in relation to it. So the growth has been extraordinary. And I think, to be fair, that's down to the individuals on the PPN, the secretariat and their support workers, because what they've done is ensure that they're relevant to the community. Now, I do know, and I got a bit of stick for it at the time, we did insist that if you wanted to access a local authority grant, that you had to register with the PPN. And there was two reasons for that from our perspective. One was that we wanted to ensure that when we were giving out information about community grants, that the majority of the communities would be made aware of them, because sometimes it's the first up is the best dressed, and those that aren't as well developed don't know about it. If you're part of the PPN, now you're getting information that there's community grants out there and you can access it. That was the first reason. And the second reason was, if we had a robust PPN structure, it meant our ability to engage with your policy development was a lot more robust as well and a lot more resilient. So I think, to be fair, a huge amount of credit goes to the PPN Secretariat and the groups, and indeed the support workers with them, for the level of activity they put into it to make sure it grew to that level. The strongest, I'd say, by a street mile in the country in terms of the numbers. Well, I have to say it was an extraordinarily busy time for anybody who was working in the local authority at that stage, because we were right in the middle of the merger and trying to get through the merger structures. In terms of, I suppose, the commitment of the individuals is really what struck me. Those that are working on it, they were coming into a new structure and a new organisation. They had a certain level of concern around how they would be viewed by the local authority, and if the local authority was going to try and control them. So they were very protective of that space, and rightly so. But I think the big biggest impact that was made on me was they got to grips with the complex structure, because there is a complex structure around the PPN, and then they were very committed to making sure that they could see it established on sound principles. They have to be complimented for that. Well, I'd like, first of all, for them to stick at what they're doing. They're doing a superb job, to be fair. I know it's not perfect. I know it's very complicated, and I know it's also very complex, and particularly for those that are working in the organisation. But you can actually make a real difference on the PPN if you engage in those structures. To be fair, I also know, and I argued it strongly at the time we were working on the national group, that people forget that in the volunteer sector, people have full-time work, they have a full-time family, they do volunteering in their spare time, which isn't that much time, and then they're supposed to be able to engage with all of these complex structures and input into strategy. So trying to make that as simple and as effective as possible is really important. So I hope they continue to hold what they have, and that they grow it, and that they're of real relevance to the PPN network, and that they listen to their concerns and their needs. So I just want to hope and recommend that everybody go out of the way to enjoy themselves tonight, that they take pride in what they have achieved, and that here's to the next 10 years. I look forward to celebrating that in another 10 years.
Over the past 10 years of my involvement in Tipperary PPN, I've met a number of great people. Everybody that's involved in the Secretariat have always worked hard to try and move us forward.
With the support of the PPN, we formed a network of environmental groups in Tipperary.
The newsletter keeps you informed of what's going on, and if there's anything that applies to the different groups I'm involved with, then you can make use of it.
We have a big number of community groups, and to be honest, if it wasn't for the community groups, we wouldn't exist.
So it's been a really great opportunity to talk about issues of importance like pesticide use, tree and hedgerow management, and a range of other topics.
A member of the PPN allows us to link in with agencies like the ETB, the NTDC, and the County Council. And through these agencies we get grants and support.
They also have representatives on the County Council strategic committees, and that's giving the community representation.
I also work for Age Friendly Rossgrey, and again the PPN has been a support for us there through, again, using their newsletter, promoting our events, supporting us with training.
But I really want to thank the volunteers. I want to thank the volunteers for their commitment, their generosity of time, and their belief in what the PPN does and also what it can do. And without them, we would be nothing.
And I think Tipperary still remains as the top PPN of the country.